NJSA 10:4-6 at SEC of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Nora, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Dinsmore.
Here.
Mr. Pergeri.
Here.
Ms. Hernandez. Here. Mr. Mendel.
Here.
Mr. Mealy.
Here.
Mr. Napolitano.
Here.
Ms. Veely. Here. Mr. Von Aiken.
Here.
We also have with us our board planner, Ms. Favate, our board engineer, Mr. Wallow, and our board attorney, Mr. Wenzel.
Okay, would everybody please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Nice to look at the actual flag when we do that. All right. We've struggled with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've held up a little patch from my uniform or something. Yeah. All right. First on our agenda, we have a number of resolutions to review. All right. So would we like to do these all together or would one at a time? All right, I'm being advised one at a time. So first on application number 20:520, One Campus Associates, 3 Campus Drive, et cetera, as it's identified on the agenda. Do we have a motion to accept or amend this resolution?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second, Dinsmore.
Who moved?
That was Mandel
Mendel, okay.
moving for approval
Second, okay.
and seconded Dinsmore. All right. Nora, please call the vote.
Dinsmore,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Mealy,
Yes.
Von Aiken.
Yes. Okay. Application number 20:526, GJ Real Properties LLC. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
motion
Mealy.
to approve application 20:526, GJ Real Properties LLC, 950 Edwards Road, Block 766, Lot 14, preliminary and final major site plan and major soil moving permit.
I'll second.
Second, Hernandez. Nora?
Dinsmore,
Yes.
Pergeri,
Yes.
Hernandez. Yes. Mendel,
Yes.
Mealy,
Yes,
Napolitano.
Yes.
Von Aiken.
Yes. Application 20:527. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Dinsmore.
Second, Mandel.
Okay, I didn't actually say which way it was going, so you have to tell me whether it was for or against. Are you recommending to approve the resolution?
Yes.
Okay. And is that a
Yes.
second for Mandel? Okay.
Dinsmore,
Yes.
Pergeri,
Yes.
Hernandez. Yes. Mendel,
Yes.
Mealy,
yes,
Napolitano.
Yes.
Von Aiken.
Yes. So I apologize for the confusion there. I was allowing either motion to go through in case there was a reason to request amendments. So thank you for working with me and getting to a clarified result. On the rest of our agenda for today, we have application 21:501. Yes, we're done with the 20s. All right, Wilderness Preserves. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, present person, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having us here. It's nice to be back for the first meeting for all of you. Would you like me to start with my introduction?
Yes, that'll be fine. When we will get to the point where we will ask to go through the waivers. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'll get that then.
Yep.
So, as I said, good evening, everybody. It's nice to be here. My name is Matt Dolan. I'm an attorney from law firm of Minor and Landis, and I represent the applicant before you tonight, Wildlife Preserves, Inc. We are here before the board tonight seeking preliminary and major site plan approval, final site plan approval, C variance, subdivision approval, as well as certain design waivers with respect to a maintenance garage that we intend to construct at block 765, lot 8110. which is located in the township's RCW zone. The specific use in question, this maintenance garage, this is an expressly permitted accessory use within the RCW zone. Per the township code, the purpose and objective of the RCW zone is to maintain and operate the properties within that zone as a wildlife preserve and provide an opportunity for observation and study of the various types of flora and fauna that are indigenous to the area. So the construction of this maintenance garage, as we'll hear through our testimony tonight, will further the purposes and objectives of that RCW zone and assist wildlife preserves with respect to their general operations and maintenance of perimeters. Wildlife Preserves is a private, nonprofit land preservation organization dedicated to the protection of natural areas, open space, wildlife habitats for conservation, education, and research. Wildlife Preserves owns and manages Torrey Meadows, located here within the township, and surrounding areas in East Hanover and Hanover. Mr. Fariello, who's here with me tonight to my right, he'll further testify a bit as to the background of Wildlife Preserves, the purpose for the proposed maintenance garage that we're here before the board on tonight, and why we're seeking approval before the board tonight in order for Wildlife Preserves to store vehicles and other types of agricultural equipment. When I say vehicles, I'm referring like tractors and the like, and other types of agricultural equipment as part of Wildlife Preserves operation and maintenance of Torrey Meadows. And the fact that that equipment was previously stored outside in the elements. So what they're really looking to do here is construct this garage type thing to store this equipment so it's not exposed to elements and can further be used for their operations within Torrey Meadows. With me tonight, as I indicated, I have Mr. Fariello to my right, who's the land manager for Wildlife Preserves. Back in our gallery here, we don't have many other people. We have Anita Shotwell, who's one of the trustees of Wildlife Preserves, and we also have Luca Fariello, who's a ranger with Wildlife Preserves. I don't anticipate any testimony from them, but to the extent that's necessary, maybe they'll come up and testify. But I think Len has a good handle of everything, and will probably handle most of our background testimony and the like. And then also with me tonight is Mr. Jason Dunn, who's a professional planner from Dykstra Associates PC. Mr. Dunn will talk about the plans, which we submitted before the board, the construction, and also testify a bit as to our variance request as well. So, would you like me to start with, you want me to start with waivers?
We can address the waivers, Susan.
Yeah, they usually turn to me at this point.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we did go through the waiver requests and are recommending a number of them, primarily given the minor nature of the use. So on the DEP letter of interpretation, we understand that an LOI is being sought, so a waiver is recommended from that item. Traffic study, floor plans, and parking, we felt none of those were required, given the minor nature and lack of traffic generation in particular. And then this is a combined final and preliminary final site plans, so they asked and we recommended waivers from the conditions of preliminary approval, and that is it. We did ask for testimony in several areas, which I know that they'll get to.
Yes, I submit a formal response to the engineer's letter. I did not submit a formal response to your letter, Mr. Pate, because I figured most of it was testimony, and I'm prepared to address that through the testimony of Mr. Fariello as well as Mr. Dunn.
All right, very good. Do we have a motion to accept the waivers as recommended by Ms. Pate?
So
So-
moved for Jerry.
Second, Dinsmore.
That works. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay. Waivers are accepted. Please continue.
Thank you, Chairman. Would you like to swear in Mr. Fariello?
There we go.
Can't believe I'm actually looking at somebody telling me to do this.
Yeah, don't use the other
Yeah,
one.
it's like, yeah, not a virtual meeting. Do you swear affirm and tell the truth before this in-person, live, real-life planning board meeting tonight, sir?
Yes.
Okay, can you please do me a favor? State and spell your name for the record.
Leonardo, Leonardo, Fariello, Fariello, land manager for Wildlife Preserve.
Okay.
Thank
Go
you.
on, your witness.
Thank you, Mr. Wenzel. Len, can you begin with providing the board a little bit of a background on Wildlife Preserves generally, what you do for Wildlife Preserves, and how Wildlife Preserves manages Torrey Meadows?
Well, Wildlife Preserves is a private, nonprofit, Ellen Marzaneri corporation dedicated to the conservation, education, and resources. Wildlife Preserves has been in existence in Parsippany since 1952. And Wildlife Preserves manages Troy Meadows, and we maintain trails. We have some bridges over some ditches and waterways. We eliminate non-native invasive species of plants, and we replant native species. And we're basically trying to enhance Troy Meadows to get the most biodiversity out of Troy Meadows. So it's really managed for the wildlife. But we have bird watchers and nature lovers that visit, so we also manage some trails and footbridges.
And as it relates to those trails and footbridges, you mentioned you have nature lovers and bird watchers, so the public comes and uses Troy Meadows and observes the various animal life and bird life and whatnot throughout Troy Meadows, right?
Yes,
Can
they
you
do.
tell the board a little bit about that?
Well, usually every morning, especially during the migration, we have a lot of cars that come in, and photographers with long lenses and binoculars, and they come in and take photographs of all the wildlife, mostly birds. We also have other groups that come in, the Audubon Society, and they organize bird watchers mostly to come in and observe the birds at Troy Meadows. There's a lot of, it's a flyway, so it's a migratory stopover and staging area for a lot of birds.
And Len, in connection with our application, you put together a general description of the development and background that you submitted to the board, right? Do you recall that?
Yes.
I want to mark that as an exhibit before the board. I believe you should all have a copy of it. I have some extra copies. It looks like this, a general description of the proposed development.
Called A1?
Yeah, we'll mark that as A1 if that's okay. Len, do you have a copy handy?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Okay, so Len, could you just briefly run through this description that you prepared for the benefit of the board? Start with the necessity of the maintenance garage. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, so we have equipment, mowing equipment, tractors. We have a couple of trucks. Everything is parked outdoors, and we really need someplace indoors to store our equipment. And so I mentioned some of the things we do with our equipment. We mow trails, we plant, we remove invasives and plant native species. And so we basically have quite a bit of agricultural equipment, and we're just looking for a place to store our equipment out of the way. And this particular spot is really ideal because it's far removed from a lot of the residential properties, which Parsippany is pretty densely populated, but we're at least 488 feet from the nearest house and 400 feet from the nearest property line of a residential house, and it's up on a high, dry hill, because most of Troy Meadows is marshland, but the fringe of Troy Meadows has some uplands, and this is one of the upland areas that can be developed relatively easy without a lot of, wetlands permits.
And so when you were talking about this being upland and discussing the residences nearby, you mentioned that we're over 400 feet from the nearest residence, actual residence, but the property in question, lot 8110, is next to a residentially zoned lot, right? Can you tell the board a little bit about that?
Well, when the township added some uses to the RCW zone, one of the uses was the maintenance garage. And we got a chance to review it, and it said 150 feet from the nearest residential property line. And we knew we were more than 150 feet from the residence. But it turns out that the New Jersey DEP natural area, which wildlife also helps manage with the state, is still zoned residential, and we were not aware of it at the time. It's actually a prohibited use under Green Acres. it's a natural area and it has to remain in its natural state, and it can never be developed as a residential development. So, it was just something we overlooked, and now we realize, we're within the 150 feet of, Green Acres, natural area. So that's one of the waivers we're.
Well, that's for purposes of our C variance. We're next to this, as indicated in the reports from the professionals. We're next to that area owned by NJDP, right?
NJDP,
Yeah.
Department of Parks and Forestry.
Okay. Some more about this, just a little bit more about the sightline. You noted how this is an upland area, right? And the majority of Fresno's is in wetlands. So how does this site make sense for your maintenance garage?
Well, we have an interior network of roads. So it's connected to a lot of Troy Meadows internally. So we're not going to be going out in Allen Drive to enter our property. We'll mostly enter the garage from internally. More recently, we removed a lot of Japanese barberry, multifloral rose, and a lot of other invasive plants, and we replanted the site with 675 fruit trees for wildlife, for the benefit of wildlife and wildlife diversity. It's an ideal site because it's upland and it's the least disturbance, one of the areas of least disturbance to the residents.
That was one of the things I was going to ask you. How do you anticipate the impact of any on the surrounding area? You indicate that mostly wildlife uses their internal roads, but as it relates to the building in question, will it only be used by employees of wildlife preserve?
Oh, yeah, it's only gonna be used by wildlife preserve. And the most, once in a while, if we have to get to a more remote area and we have to, we have a trailer and we could put the tractor on a trailer and go through Allen Drive to the north end or to the east end of the Meadows. But mostly, all our work is on the western side of Troy Meadows, and that's where that's where the maintenance garage is gonna be, and that's why we chose this area.
I want to touch upon some of the comments made in the letter from Mr. Cangiano, and Mr. Dunn is going to touch upon some of those as well, but some of them I think should specifically be addressed by Mr. Ferriello, and then I'll get to some of the testimony and some of the issues that Mr. Ferriello is going to touch upon from Mr. Cavante. So, Len, as it relates to the Green Acres status of the property, can you explain that a little bit better for the board?
Okay, Wildlife Preserves was purchased with private funds from philanthropists back in the 50s. Wildlife Preserves is not Green Acres land per se. It's not funded.
It's not funded by Green Acres.
Or unfunded by Green Acres. It's private property. And the only affiliation we have with Green Acres is there's a law in the state of New Jersey where a property owner, a nonprofit property owner, can open their property to the public for the public enjoyment and receive a tax exemption. And that is, it's not even permanent. So every 3 years, we have to recertify. And that's our only affiliation with Green Acres. And I have here.
You submitted that with the application, right, Len? The continued eligibility letter? I think the board should
Yes.
have a copy of that document.
But I just wanted to say that the tax exemption, it's the tax exemption program for Green Acres. So it's private property, but we maintain it by opening it to the public. The public can enjoy it at no cost to the taxpayers, and that's our only affiliation with Green Acres.
Okay. One of the other comments was with respect to the cul-de-sac bulbs at the end of Allen Drive, Bennett Court, and Marshall Terrace. I believe that those cul-de-sac bulbs at the end of those streets, for whatever reason, the township at some point in the past created those cul-de-sacs, but they're actually encroaching upon, partially encroaching upon wildlife preserve property. And one of the comments that came up in one of the professional review letters, it might have been yours, Mr. Vellante, was what our intention was with respect to those cul-de-sac bulbs, and if we'd be willing to dedicate those cul-de-sac bulbs over to the township as part of the application or as a condition of the application. And I think that's acceptable to us, right, Len?
Yeah, the board decided that we would do that, yes.
Okay.
If it's a condition of approval, we will,
So it's essentially, well, it's partially a clerical issue that needs to be resolved, I think, one way or the other anyway. So we would agree as a condition of approval to dedicate those.
Right, it would be a roadway dedication to the township, not an easement.
Right.
We had this discussion.
Yes.
Mr. Dolan and I had this discussion, and if this was gonna be a condition of approval, roadway dedication is different, legally speaking, than an easement. This does not need to be an easement, just like any roadway you have through your community, that roadway is really by way of dedication, meaning that is the public access right of way, even though technically your property line, maybe you don't realize this, but your property line technically runs in the middle of the road. But that's what's happening here. It's not an easement.
Right.
It doesn't mean that the township has the right to go into there and do as they please. They simply have the right that's a dedicated spot for the township to have access to for clearing of snow and debris and so on and so forth. So it gives them every right that the township would have for every other roadway that exists, township roadway that exists in Township Parsippany.
Isn't it intended to be for a turning radius for emergency vehicles?
Correct, that would, the roadway is designed to allow that as well.
I might add, it already exists.
Yeah, those
Sure.
all exist, as you guys know,
And the
right?
curbs are there, so it's just,
Clerical.
I've gone through it.
Yeah, I mean, this
That
has
was a
come
car.
up, this has come up on other applications where it runs down the center of the roadway, and it's good practice to dedicate to the town.
Right, okay, so that's that issue. Len, can you provide some testimony to the board as it relates to the purpose of the proposed subdivision?
well, the purpose of the subdivision is that the upland, it's a hillside. It was purchased from Cameron, and the state purchased some of Cameron's Hill, and Wildlife has the hillside of Cameron's Hill. And it's really one of the only developable pieces of lots in the area. The other lot is impacted by Troy Brook, and since now the township has conformed to the Highlands, we're 300 feet from any waterway or wetlands in the lower part. So we just feel we'd like to divide the area of land that we're gonna have the garage and the area of land that we're working on for improving the habitat to the area that's not gonna be used by us. And the other issue is we are filing for a letter of interpretation on the wetlands, and this just keeps it, the wetlands lines are just delineated for the upper portion, or the northern portion of the lot.
Both between the improved and unimproved ones.
Yes.
Are there any utilities contemplated for use as part of this proposed development?
No.
So there's no request, we're not making any request, right, to connect to the existing electrical panel on Allen Drive, is that right?
No, we wouldn't want to run a line anyway. We want to maintain the natural integrity of the land, and we wouldn't want to run a power line up there.
So there's not going to be any type of proposed services
No.
such as that? Can you tell us about emergency access and maintenance garage if necessary?
Yeah, that would be through Allen Drive.
So there's a gate at Allen Drive,
It's
right?
gated Allen Drive.
And so the township currently has a key to that lock at the gate on Allen Drive?
No, they don't.
Okay. But the township would have access to that gate for purposes of a...
Well, for purposes of emergency, I think they would just cut the lock.
Well, okay. I think that's a good point. Okay, so they can access through that gate.
They can access through that gate.
What about some other information on anticipated operations, or anticipated hours, lighting, equipment?
Hours, well, Luca is the first one on the job, and he's here at 7, but we would conform to any hours of the planning board.
Well, what are your typical hours?
Our typical hours, well, my hours are 9 to 5, and his are 7 to 3, and then we have some laborers that come in at 8 to 4. So That's the typical hours. And typically, we wouldn't be doing any work on the weekend. I mean, there's rangers out on the weekend, but not any kind of maintenance. Typically, there's not any maintenance to be done.
So the use of the garage on the weekend would be limited and not during the night?
Oh, no, not during the night at all. We're not gonna have lights.
Right. What about storage within the actual maintenance shed or garage? Are there going to be any types of chemicals stored in there?
Nothing more than what would be in a normal homeowner's garage, really. Maybe 5-gallon can of gasoline, no.
You don't use chemicals within Troy Meadows, so you wouldn't be storing those in the garage?
Well, if we do, we hire special contractors with those kind of licenses.
Okay. And what about waste management? Carry in, carry out?
Yes.
For purposes of accessing the gate and parking, you guys would drive through and shut the gate, right? No one would be parked.
Well, when we're there, and if we access, we leave the gate open until we exit, actually.
Okay.
But normally, we won't even be coming from that direction.
Because you'd be utilizing the internal rooms?
Yes.
I think that's all my questions for Len, and like I said, Mr. Dunn is going to touch upon a lot of the other specific planner and engineer type questions, but if the board has questions for Mr. Ferriello, then I welcome any of those questions.
All right, we'll start with Mr. Wallow. Was there anything that he missed from the engineering letter that you'd like to
And just
follow
keep
up
in
on?
mind, I'm going to touch upon some of those questions from Mr. Dunn, the engineering questions, so.
Yeah, I figured we
Okay.
would talk about those with him. That's why he answered all the questions we had. No other
Okay.
concerns.
No, fair enough. All right, any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman? I'd like further explanation on the request for the subdivision. All I see in the future is you're looking to sell off this piece of property later for somebody to build a house, and that's not the desire on my part anyway. And that's why I'd like a little further clarification on where you're going with this subdivision.
I'll let Mr. Ferriello testify, but I just want to note for the board, no residences are permitted in RCW zoning, and so there cannot be homes built here. And in fact, we specifically entered into a settlement negotiation with the township in order to get these very specific uses related to wildlife preserves and the maintenance of Troy Meadows. But Len, you can testify some more as to what your intentions are with respect to subdivision, because I think that's a good point. My understanding is that's, like you said, to differentiate between unimproved and improved lots. But go ahead, Len.
Well, I don't see wildlife preserve selling off any land. We're interested in acquiring more land if we can get it. And that's what we've been doing for the last 50, 60 years, is acquiring land. As far as I know, the only land wildlife has ever sold, and not in Troy Meadows, is to the Nature Conservancy and to the state of New Jersey and DEP, and through the Passaic River Flood Storage Area, which was the Army Corps of Engineers for flood storage at Great Peace Meadows. But Wildlife Preserves does not sell off land.
May I ask something?
Please, go ahead.
So, Steve Mandel, I think this was a few years ago when they rezoned it, so no residents are allowed there. That whole subdivision thing people were concerned on Allen Drive years ago, but that's
Yes.
why they rezoned it, and it was with this in mind. And I've seen it, because I've been out there. And, he says it's a nice little wildlife area. It's a significant, important piece of property.
No, I know
I
that.
mean, it's back to glacial, forget 1950s, this has been around forever, and it's really an important piece of property. And they do great work out there, and they just need to cover their vehicles so the bats and critters don't go in it, right?
No, I understand the need for the garage. I
Yeah.
just don't understand the need for the subdivision.
Yeah.
Typically when somebody comes to us with a
They
subdivision,
want to sell off.
they want,
Yeah,
you know,
that's what it sounds like, right?
we've had that not too distant future for TGI Friday.
Mhm, mhm.
1515 has come before us and they want to do it, and they're claiming it's because of the mortgage on different parcels, which I understand. And I'm just trying to understand why
No,
you,
we don't want to.
so what benefit is it to subdivide it?
The benefit is for our management, our internal management of the property. Currently, we have a conservation, plan being, written by a conservation organization for that, only that particular piece of land. So it's really helpful to us. Also, the, wetlands delineation, we delineated that section of land, and, the DEP charges, $100 more an acre per acre to delineate land, plus $1,000, I believe. So, we've delineated that section of land. It's physically divided by, an easement, which is actually a gravel road that's used by the pipeline, Texas Eastern Pipeline Company. So it's a physical barrier between, the northern part and the southern part of the property.
Okay.
I think, Mr. Mandel, if I could add a little piece of clarification as well, though very little, but enough to make me dangerous on the DEP wetlands delineation. I think when Mr. Dunn speaks, so he's going to refer to his soon-to-be exhibit there, but I would just say, when you look at it, you'll see towards the bottom of that lot, the Troy Brook flow, which is in the, what I'll say, the lower lot versus the area of the upper lot where the maintenance garage is going to be put. And you're in essence separating the wet from the dry. And I think that's what you're hearing from Mr. Ferriello in terms of their application. So from a legal standpoint, it identifies more clearly for any applicant a particular lot that is being subjected to that letter of interpretation, rather than having the entire lot, which may 80% mostly be dry. So that's what they're attempting to do.
Makes sense.
It's another, really what it comes down to, quite honestly, is another funding stream, funding issue, and expenditure issue.
For administrative purposes, right?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just follow along one more question on the subdivision. I think we all understand the purpose of it. Can you speak at all to any potential developability given the RCW on the southern lot? So you can have one ranger relief station, one environmental education center, which seems very unlikely given that it's 4,000 square foot max. But certainly, potentially a ranger relief station and an unspecified number of nature observatory structures. So are those possible on the southern lot, given how wet it is?
No, they're not, because of the New Jersey Freshwater Wetlands Protection Act. And even more so with the Highlands conformance of Parsippany.
We wouldn't meet the buffer requirements, I don't think. Yeah.
And if you look, I guess he's got the brook on the plan, you'll see how close,
The brook is, yeah.
yeah, the brook is to the residents.
And Len, is there any intention to build anything else on the
No,
southern
there's
section of the
not.
lot?
As a matter of fact, I might add that when Wildlife Preserves bought this property, there was an 11-lot subdivision that was never created. Wildlife bought a subdivision. If Wildlife was in the business of developing it, they could have developed those 11 lots. So the deed and our survey shows that, because the deeds were these 11-lot subdivision. Anyway, those lots were never created. Wildlife never had any intention of developing that property. So I just want to say that subdivision was 1954. And you can get a copy of it at the Morris County Hall of Records. And it shows clearly all these lots that are built as a matter of fact, they had a road that went from Marshall Terrace to Bennett Court with houses on both sides. So anyway, Wildlife purchased the property, kept it natural for 60 years, 70 years, I guess, 70 years, and no intention to build there.
Thank you. Any other questions from the members of the board? Dominic?
Mr. Chairman, Will there be any repair of equipment in the garage which might cause a noise issue with the residents?
I don't believe there'll be anything that will cause any noise.
Do you anticipate repairing equipment in the garage?
Probably minor repairs, but if we have major repairs to do, we tow it out to, for instance, our tractor we have a contract to, where we purchased it, where they do major repairs. But,
Is anyone at Wildlife qualified to do major repairs like that on equipment?
no. I mean, we change a cable now and then, tires, we have taken tires off, brought them back, things like that, but nothing, no major, we're
Thank
not
you. Thank you.
mechanics. We just want it for storage.
Okay.
Ms. Veely?
I was just curious where the lots, the new lot and the old lot of the subdivision came from, because normally the town, the tax assessor, when we have a subdivision, coming from planning and zoning, construction being my departments, we usually like the subdivision to be two new numbers, so that that old number exists as what it was, and the two lots become two new numbers, so that going forward, we always understand when we have the lot number. And I just was curious, I noticed that the old number continues as one of the numbers, and I know that the tax assessor, as soon as he sees this, he's gonna lose his mind, because he likes to be consistent with that, so that going back in record, we always know that, what the number is. So,
Mr. Dunn could probably testify further to that, Ms. Veely, but I don't think that it matters to us what the numbers are.
what the numbers are.
Yeah.
Just going forward, that would probably be a revision coming from the assessor down the road.
Whatever the assessor wishes to call the lot.
You're okay with it?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I
go
have a
ahead,
couple
Mr.
questions.
Napolitano.
Where are the trucks stored now?
The trucks are stored now on the Texas Eastern Algonquin pipeline.
So where would that be on the map then?
Okay, it's off this map, but if you went down Troy Meadow Road,
Yeah, I'm looking at the map right now, so I asked, yeah, okay.
if you went down Troy Meadow Road,
Right,
we have a staging area
okay,
along Troy Brook, and then we follow the pipeline. There's a road that goes from the pipeline, crosses Troy Brook, goes all the way to Cameron's Hill where the garage is. Right now, the trucks are parked outside in the open area on the pipeline.
okay.
And
Alright.
into the tractors. And the tractor, we have several pieces of equipment that attach to the tractors, mowers, discs, and things like that.
Right. And the point is to put these inside.
Excuse me?
Your point is you want to put these inside somewhere?
Yes.
Preserve that,
So,
gotcha.
Glenn, can you tell the board a little bit about some of the repairs you've had to do recently? You had mentioned you had an issue with one of your tractors that you had to keep bringing for repairs because rodents were getting inside, right, that sort of thing? Can you tell the board about that? Maybe that'll help them understand better why we want to put this stuff inside.
Tasty wires?
Well, it's mostly the weather,
Yeah.
but rodents do get in there. And at one point, we turned it on and there was mice nests in there because we overwintered it and didn't really use it during the cold winter weather. So because it's a wildlife sanctuary, there are a lot of mice that get in there and nest in the area. And so, but it's mostly the weather. I mean, things are rusted.
Okay.
When I mentioned the cables, they should be inside because the rain causes rust and then they break.
And I'm sure this isn't the exact garage, but will it be locked and who has access to the keys? Or that's someone else going to testify to that?
Well, I haven't thought about locking it, but there will be locks on it, and that is the garage that we,
You want to mark that?
That's the exact same one?
yeah.
Can mark this as an exhibit?
It's in our,
It's gotta be something better than this, I'm kidding, I'm sure it's like us. But we're not planning on locking it?
Well, I hadn't thought of it, but I guess we will
Okay.
have to lock it, yes. Of course.
I would just imagine
And
there's,
I'm sure
certain
the
tools in
doors-
there, expensive things, I would want to lock it, so.
Well, nothing's locked right now, it's all out in the open, but
Okay.
yeah, the doors are gonna come with locks, so yes.
Okay.
Now, just for the purpose of the record, based upon Mr. Napolitano referring to the infamous computer-generated image, we'll call that
Me
A2.
too, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I used to do this.
Okay. It's in our packet, that's usually good enough.
Okay.
Any other questions by the board?
Okay.
I have one more question for Mr. Cariello. One of the things as we were going through this application, we were reviewing the township's master plan and, you know, the consistency with the master plan, and I think that Mr. Cariello wanted to talk about a little bit how this use complies with the township's master plan and the intentions with respect to wildlife preserves within Troy Meadows. So go ahead, Lenny.
Well, I'll just read from the Township Master Plan, January
We like
6,
hearing that.
2020. And it says, support preservation and access at Troy Meadows. The nonprofit group Wildlife Preserves provides public access to Troy Meadows, but this access is not sufficiently qualified to attract majority of Parsippany residents. Trails are not well maintained and universally accessible. Maps are not widely available. There's no education or support center for visitors. Troy Meadows is a national natural landmark, and providing public access is a bare minimum of the potential for public enjoyment. The township should continue to work with wildlife preserves to improve public access, including development of a wildlife center while balancing the need of ecological preservation. So, I did want to read this because, I feel like the township does want to work with wildlife preserves and wildlife wants to work with the township, to improve our land, and this is just one other aspect to help us, continue to manage and improve the property.
Okay. Just following up on Mr. Napolitano's question about the locks, you do have the locks on the gates, correct?
Excuse me?
We mentioned the locks on the gates earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I think it probably would be beneficial to add as a condition that the township have a key to the lock, just so you
Well,
don't
it's
have to.
not, it's really not our gate, and it's not our, it's on our property, but it's, Texas Eastern Algonquin.
Oh, okay.
Easement.
And they're locked also then?
They're locked also, yes.
Okay. So you wouldn't be allowed to give that kind of authority then?
No, it's their road. We
Okay.
use it because it's on our
So I
property.
guess they would have to grant one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
In essence, the thought being is that, should there be an emergency, rather than cut the lock, normally for, certain safety aspects, a key is given to the local fire company, so they have an ability to just take it out, unlock the gate, and
We
go
have
through and...
Like a Knox box.
Probably 12
Lockbox.
12 gates around Troy Meadows, and we lock them for security purposes. Mostly, we have had problems with ATVs, unauthorized vehicles, and also, we've had problems with big monster trucks going in and tearing up the land. So we do lock the gates, and it's for security purposes. But whenever Parsippany has asked, and there was a time when the fire company did drills back there, we unlock the gates for them. We're very cooperative with them, but,
Yeah.
we do lock our gates, all around the meadows for security purposes.
And I'm sure the risks are remote. We're just trying to cover that basis if we could.
Yeah,
So, Len, I don't know if this would be, we'd have to review whatever the agreement is with Texas Eastern, but, I mean, if we were to we would potentially be amenable to providing a key to the fire department if necessary.
if necessary, yeah, but,
Then
again, it's not really ours to grant.
Right, okay.
And there's, I've read the easement too, it's very specific to,
Okay, I believe you.
what you can do on that pipeline.
That's a gas
Okay.
transmission line. Occasionally those things.
Right.
All right. You have another witness?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Len?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, do that, please. For now, yeah.
Good evening. Get used to standing back up. Let's swear you in. Do you swear affirm tell the truth before this planning board tonight?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, it's Jason Dunn, D-U-N-N.
Witness has been sworn, Mr. Chairman, if you want to allow the attorney to put on qualifications.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dunn, can you please provide the board with the benefit of your professional experience and licensure?
Yes, of course. I'm a licensed professional planner and licensed landscape architect in the state of New Jersey. Both licenses are in good standing. I have a degree in environmental planning and design from Rutgers University. I've been in the land development and design industry for about 20 years now and have provided testimony before many boards in northern New Jersey in site plan, subdivision, and variances. I've been an expert witness mostly in Sussex County, but also in Morris and Warren County as well.
And you've been admitted as an expert witness before land use boards, before all those boards you testified before?
Yes, yes, and one of the questions Matt asked me is how many, and I honestly haven't kept count. That's a tough one, but it's certainly over 100, all the years.
Okay. I think, Chairman, I recommend that Mr. Dunn be admitted as an expert planner before the board.
Any members of the board have any questions about the qualifications or experiences of the witness? All right, seeing none, we'll accept the witness
Thank you, Chairman.
as an expert in planning, correct?
Correct. Mr. Dunn, you're familiar with the site in question, right?
Yes, I've helped prepare the plans with the surveyor and engineer. I've also visited the site.
Okay, so when you refer to the plans that you helped prepare, you're referring to the plans that we submitted to the board from your firm, Dykstra Associates PC?
That's correct.
You want to mark that, well, I think actually, we have Landon testifies this, so I'll have Mr. Dunn testify too, because I think might be important. I'll mark as A3 that we also submit photographs of the site and leading up to the site to the board. Yep. We'll mark that as A3.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody have a copy of that, I guess?
Yes. Yep. As part of the packet.
Mr. Dunn, so these photographs taken from January of 2021 with respect to the site and the area leading up to the site, are these an accurate depiction of what the site looks like from your site review?
Yes, this is accurate, showing the access road and a portion of the site in question.
Okay, can you generally describe to the board the site conditions?
I can, I'd like to refer to the map while I do.
Yeah, that's fine.
This is the same one that was provided, just a colorized version.
It's a colorized version, and there's some, I think Mr. Dunn added some of his own little drawings on there, so we'll mark that one as A4.
In order to address some of the engineering comments, I could add some text and language.
Mr. Dunn, excuse me, would you bring the mic with you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Does that one work?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for reminding me. Should we mark each sheet as a different exhibit?
I don't think that that's necessary. I
Because,
think we can just
each
mark
color
it as, just mark it as group as A4
Yeah.
with today's date of June 7th.
You're better than I am.
So the first sheet, may I set this here?
Can you hear it?
No problem.
Down there?
Yes.
The first sheet is the cover sheet, which shows the key map and where the property in question lies within the neighborhood. It's a 200 scale map in the center of the sheet, and I've marked a red line indicating the proposed minor subdivision line. The southern property is what was referred to in testimony as the lower lot, and that is mostly inundated with wetlands and Troy Brook. The northern lot, or the upper lot, is where we're proposing the proposed garage. That's indicated by a red dot on this map. The engineer in his letter had requested that we show these on the key map, and we can revise the plans in that way as a condition of approval.
And Mr. Dunn, you had discussed these issues with the engineer prior, right? Not Mr. Wallow, I don't think, someone else.
No,
Mr.
yes.
Mr. Canjiano? Okay.
Yes.
You had discussed those revisions with him, and I believe your representation was that he was comfortable with that, right?
Yes, one of the questions we had internally is whether we should resubmit plans before this meeting. I had reached out to Mr. Caggiano, just to be sure he was comfortable with us not submitting plans and showing as an exhibit, so that's what we're doing here. Before I turn to the next page, I just wanted to indicate the zoning map, and the blue represents the residential zones, and the pink color represents our zone. This lot right here, which is to the west of our lot, is the NJDEP lot that was testified to earlier.
For the lot that's all residential, that should probably be zoned for CBD.
The second sheet is several zoning charts showing the different conditions before and after the subdivision. I've highlighted in orange the one variance that we're asking for, which is the distance to improvements from a property line that is neighboring a residential zone. It should be greater than 150. We're asking for variance for the distance to be 81.6 feet. To my knowledge, that's the only variance we're asking for on this subdivision and site plan. This map is at 1 inch equals 200. It shows a couple different things. It reiterates the proposed minor subdivision line along just south of the gas line access easement. It also shows the cul-de-sacs that were discussed earlier along Marcia Terrace, Bennett Court, and at the end of Allen Drive that we would agree to dedicate to the township if they would allow that. This map generally shows the setback lines and the neighborhood of Allen Drive leading to the property.
And the rest of the bulk standards are on that too, right?
Yes, that's correct. Setbacks, the uses that are allowed, and areas. The minor subdivision, I should say, the total lot is about 21 acres, and we're essentially splitting it in half. Lot 81.12 on the south would be 10.158 acres, and lot 81.10 on the north would be 10.842 acres. That's really by coincidence only. There's no real need to have it exact, near half. The last sheet, I remember what I wanted to say about the lot numeration, to your point. Typically, when we do minor subdivision, we reach out to the tax assessor first, and to be honest with you, I don't recall if we did that and got a correspondence back. But
It's not in the packet
not in there.
that he responded, and I've been with the town 30 years.
Sure.
So I know that that's like a point with him. So
Yes.
when he sees it, I didn't want you to be surprised that he'll probably want the number to change.
And that is very important for us too, because we have to make sure all the maps and deeds and everything is correct to what he or she says it should be. So we can agree to do that as a condition of any approval. Last sheet, sheet 3, is titled Site Plan for Proposed Garage. It's just colored just slightly so we can see the length of the driveway, the green area, which would be the disturbed area, which would require grading, and then in the center is the orange colored building, which is the garage. So as Len indicated, there are a couple different access points. One is from Allen Drive, but mostly they would be coming from internal roads and the gas line shared access easement to get to the proposed garage. The existing access drive is about 500 feet long from the gas line access easement to the proposed disturbance area. There's an elevation change of about 40 feet between that access drive and the location of the garage. This map also shows a wetlands line. I don't know if the board can see it, the W's. I will say that our office did a preliminary investigation to kind of get an idea of where that line is. However, this is not NJDEP verified yet. We would have to go for an LOI to determine that. However, we are pretty certain that we would need a wetlands permit or a transition area waiver to have the driveway cross where it does, and we are willing to do that as a condition of any approval.
Mr. Dunn, besides that NJDEP approval that you just talked about, are you aware of any other outside agency approvals that we would need in connection with this application?
Due to the disturbance area around the building, it's over 5,000 square feet, so we would need a soil erosion and sediment control certification, plan certification from Morris County Soil Conservation District.
And we would request that both those century conditions.
Yes, I believe we would have to have that, that approval before we can get a building permit. So once the vehicle goes up the hill toward the proposed structure, it kind of winds left and then makes a hard right into the two garage door openings. The reason to do this is to compensate for the slope, and so that it's less than 15% in all cases. That's important for emergency vehicle access. There's also a 24-foot by 26-foot turnout area, so that a vehicle can turn around at the top of the hill without having to go on soil or grass. The surface is proposed to be some kind of stone aggregate, whether that be dense graded aggregate or another acceptable crushed stone, to make sure that there's not mud or problems that way. There's a concrete pad just in front of the proposed structure. The structure itself is a two-car or two-bay garage. Approximately wouldn't be any more than 24 feet high by my estimate. The photos that were submitted, I think it's exhibit A3? A2, is a representation of what that building would be. My understanding that it's metal siding, metal roof.
Mr. Dunn, is it your understanding that those are the same colors that we're proposing for the garage too?
Yes, based on conversations with the wildlife preserves, those colors, the brown and the dark green, were chosen to blend as best as possible in with the forest in all seasons. Which leads me to my next point. The setback variance we're asking for is to the western property line, which is adjacent to Lot 63, Block 765, owned by NJDEP, and it happens to be in an R1 residential zone. The visibility of the structure is going to be very minimal, and only during the winter months when the leaves are off the trees. We did a study while we were standing up there, and we could barely see the edge of the home, actually I think it was an outbuilding, a shed or something, on Lot 61, Block 765. This is the home that is closest to the structure at over 400 feet away. So it's my opinion that it would not be visible from the majority of the neighborhood, and very little visibility to anyone.
Especially in the summer, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Because when you were there, it was in the winter, right?
I was in the wintertime that the leaves were just, and I was also there when the leaves were just coming out.
Okay.
So I haven't seen it in full leaf, but I presume more leaves the better in this case. I want to note too that the area around this has been actively managed by Len and his co-workers, and that makes a lot of sense to put it here as well for two reasons. The tree removal would be minimal. There is some trees that would be removed along the western property line to accommodate for the grading and the slope, but we, of course, because of our mission, we try to reduce tree removal as much as possible. It also makes sense by way of grading and balancing the earthwork the best way we can. If we were to bring it down and away from that 150 feet, we'd have to bring in a lot more soil and disturb a lot more land, take down a lot more trees. So we think this is a better alternative. That's all I have as far as site description, I think. If there's any questions.
I think you covered everything as it relates to the site description. Okay. Unless the board has other questions about the site itself and the building, I guess.
All right, we'll start with Susan then.
Yeah, well, I think you're probably going to give testimony on the variances. I just wanted to clarify for the record that there are actually two variances. They're kind of for the same thing. One is for the residential setback and one is for the side yard. But they're both
For the residents.
for, it's,
Residential lot.
yeah. So it's 150 feet setback from a residential lot, and then it's a 100-foot side yard requirement. So you don't meet either of them.
Okay. The side yard for any building, I think?
Just according to the zoning table that's in the submitted plans, a
Okay.
100-foot side yard is required, and you're deficient
The
at
100-foot side yard. I'm sorry, I
81.6.
kept thinking 150,
Yeah, there's 150
You're
and
correct.
100.
Thank you.
Right there.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
Jen, and do you have something else to add? Ms.
Yeah,
Beely?
can you repeat the height of the structure?
It wouldn't be any more than 24 feet.
Okay, the zone, for most of Parsippany, any accessory structure Maximum height to the peak is 15 feet, so that would be another variance.
No, I think you made a mistake then.
It's possible,
Let me testify
but it's
more
also,
about
it's also, I don't know if it's, I don't know if it's an accessory structure, that's my question.
Well, it's an accessory use,
It's-
so.
Yeah, everything is either in the ordinance broken down as either a principal structure or an accessory structure. And unfortunately, most garages of that size normally get a variance for the height.
Right.
It's very typical.
It would be very difficult to
build
do
it
this at 15
without.
feet.
Correct.
Okay.
But if, Leonard, are you going to clarify that?
we would.
Request that as part of the variance?
Yeah. Len, do you have something different about the exact height? I don't know.
Yes.
He has to come to the mic.
Sorry.
Thank you.
He's still
Or Mr.
swearing, right?
Mealy says it.
Well, I'll just speak from memory, but I'm pretty sure my memory is good. The height to the door is 11 feet, and with the pitch is 14 feet, 7 inches. And we did talk about that, but, so 14 feet, 7 inches is
To the
the
peak.
maximum.
I think that,
You probably want to get it just in case.
Yeah, I would
some-
get, I
yeah.
would get it
Go ahead
just
and
in
get it.
case,
All right.
because when you
Yeah.
submit me the plans, to zoning, and if it's more,
yeah, we
I
might.
can't give you the permit. So better to get it,
All of a sudden, your footing needs to be a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah, all right.
I did check.
And then you don't need to come back.
then you don't need to come
All
back.
right, then we'd like to take an application to include that.
Okay. All right.
And I can provide testimony on that too, as far as variance.
And just for the record, for notice purposes, your notice did indicate, and any other variances
Right.
that may come up during the hearing, right? Mr.
Yes,
Nolan?
that's correct.
I knew you'd say that.
Okay. Was there anything else, Ms. Sabate?
No.
Okay. Mr. Wallow?
He answered our questions regarding DEP permitting, so we would accept as a condition of approval to get the LOI, a wetlands permit or waiver, whatever would be applicable. You answered our question regarding the soil conservation district application, which you would apply for since the disturbance exceeds 5,000. Did you testify as to how much new impervious and/or vehicular traveled surface there is in total? I believe you said the total disturbance is around 16,000. How much
Yes.
of it would be impervious? I know in your letter, the letter back said it was not a major development. Just want to confirm that.
That's correct. The proposed impervious surface is less than 1/4 acre, and the proposed disturbance is less than 1 acre.
Okay. Do you know how much new impervious there will be?
Off the top of my head, I have to look at the chart, I'm sorry. It's really limited to just the garage structure and the concrete, unless the town counts the gravel as impervious.
Well, that would be, I suppose, DEP's interpretation of whether they consider the gravel to be impervious or
Right.
a traveled surface for vehicles. But that would be all subject to DEP permitting.
I would clarify too that the driveway is an existing feature that we're just proposing to repair.
Zoning does it.
Right.
Yeah, it's already there. We're not making a new turn.
Right. The only other question I had, there was a letter from the sewer department, and maybe you could have brought this up earlier, regarding consideration for an easement with the sanitary sewer. I don't know if that's been discussed.
Yes,
Mr. Lindell and I have discussed it, and I'm currently discussing those issues separately with Mr. Lott, who's the township attorney.
Okay.
And that's part of our ongoing discussions related to sewer access. I don't think the township's fully aware of what kind of sewer access they're going to need yet through Troy Meadows, and I'm in negotiations with Mr. Lott relating to that.
Okay, just so everyone's aware, I think you saw on the maps that there is a part of a sewer line that runs through what I'll call, once again, I'm going to refer to as the lower lot. But then that sewer line then continues and continues and continues throughout the...
Throughout Troy Meadows.
Throughout Troy Meadows. So, all the way to the sewage treatment plant on the other side of Route 280. Mr. Dolan and I and Mr. Lott have had extensive, numerous conversations, Friday afternoons usually. So there's been, there's an understanding, I think, on both sides as to what needs to be done and where we need to end up. It's just the particulars that have to be filled out. It's really not something that's necessarily within the jurisdiction of the planning board per se. It's something that's really in the jurisdiction of the township. their sewer utility, and obviously with wildlife preserves to have those discussions. But that's where we're at. So that's a TBD,
Yes.
they say.
No further questions at this point.
Okay. I'll open it up to any board members for questions. Go ahead, Mr. Mealy.
Mr. Dunn, you said that there would be a concrete slab in front of the garage,
Yes,
so that supposes that we're gonna have to get a cement truck up there. Is the aggregate sufficient to allow a truck of that magnitude to get up there to lay out some concrete?
yes, it will be.
Just a small detail, but...
It is, but it's an important one.
Yes.
Yes, certainly before that is built, the driveway will be brought up to a little better condition to handle that.
Thank you.
Any other board members with questions? Mr. Mandel?
Yeah, well, mine's a follow-up on that, because I was gonna ask, was that improved roadway capable of supporting fire truck, EMS vehicles?
That hasn't been proof rolled yet or anything.
Well,
but
but
it-
if it'll handle a concrete truck,
Yes.
I'm assuming it'll handle a fire engine.
Oh,
and
I'm sorry, you're asking about the existing access driveway?
No, the new one.
The new one, yes.
Because now you're gonna have a garage there and somebody
Right.
have a heart attack. There could be a fire. You wanna have access for emergency vehicles.
Absolutely, that's in everyone's best interest, and we would make sure the road is in good enough condition for that.
Wide enough and
Yes, I think we have it at 12 foot wide now.
I'm sorry, did you say 12 foot wide?
12 feet, is that right?
And I think Mr. Ferriello testified before as to the turnaround at the top, right? Maybe you did too.
Yes. The DEP may restrict that width to 10 feet. I just remember that.
Mr. Napolitano?
Thank you. Just a minute, how many, like, how long is it gonna take to do? Time frame?
Mr. Ferriello might be able to better testify to that. The timeframe, estimated timeframe to construct?
Well, we have no actual time frame of when we're gonna begin, but I'm sure when we begin, it's not gonna be more than 6 months. We'll pour a slab, and then the company will come in and assemble a prefabricated building. So there's not a lot of construction involved, except the slab that it has to sit on.
I was just looking at, how much concrete you might need. It doesn't seem like there's that many trucks. I'm just worried about the residents on Allen Drive. How many truckloads are coming in and out of, I don't know, you're pulling trees out, you're bringing in gravel, so I'm just worried about the residents over there. I mean, how many trucks can be going in and out of there along that road during construction?
Well, I haven't calculated the exact amount, but there will be a gravel all the way up, so, and if it's 10 feet wide, I mean, maybe you can do that calculation, but, and then there's gonna be a 4-foot slab, I believe is what the company requires.
So, in my opinion, it wouldn't be any more truck traffic as for a single-family home. It's very kind of a low-intensity construction. So yes, it may have several trucks a day for a week or so at the most, but then it'll be nothing.
Thank you.
Any other board members with questions? All right, seeing none, I'll turn it back over to
Thank you,
you,
sir. Yes, so now, I think if Mr. Dunn doesn't have any other comments related to the actual, plans that were submitted and the construction and the like, I'd like Mr. Dunn to testify a bit, based on his, expertise as a professional planner related to our C variance and, how we can meet some of the positive and negative criteria related to that C variance.
Thank you. The 3 C variances.
The 3, yes.
There's three,
The 100-foot side yard, the,
150 foot distance to residential zone.
as well as our height.
accessory use height.
Can I clarify something? I know it's a moot point right now, but I found the calculation. It's 11 feet to the top of the doors, and the pitch is 3 feet, 11 inches. So, it's 14 feet, 11
But
inches.
you don't know how high the base is gonna be, right? So we'll leave our variance as is.
Okay, I just
Maybe
wanted to
maybe
clarify,
de
because I
minimis,
said.
but-
Yeah, it might be, just in case, it might be slightly
Okay.
above 15, so that's just.
Thank you. So in my analysis, would be qualified for a C2 variance. There are portions that may lead to C1 proofs about hardship with the wetlands and the limited amount of uplands. But I truly believe that the benefits outweigh any detriments for these variances. Positive criteria is that it advances the goals of the municipal land use law, A, C, E, and G. It promotes the general welfare and public health by supporting the conservation area and outdoor space and the necessary maintenance of the same. We heard from the expert, or from the fact witness, about the missions and goals and how it relates to the Parsippany Troy Hills Master Plan. It does help provide light, air, and open space by helping maintain this amazing property in your town. Goal E is preservation of environment, and Goal G is allowing sufficient space for recreation and open space, among other uses in your town. But again, as Len had pointed out, it also holds an important part of the goals and objectives of your master plan by maximizing the value and utility of existing open space and supporting the conservation of the Troy Meadows properties. Turning to negative criteria, it's my opinion that there's no substantial detriment to the public good. We spoke about the traffic tonight, how there's going to be very little traffic. Most of the users will be, and the employees will be coming in from internal roads, not through Allen Drive. There will be some construction traffic. There will be no odors, light, or significant noise emanated from this. It's distant and far enough. It's isolated from the roads and neighborhood. It's also my opinion that there's no substantial detriment to the zone plan. Although the 150-foot and 100-foot distance and the height of the building are not truly in strict compliance to your zone plan or your zoning. The neighbor next door is NJDEP, and you're never going to see it developed with homes, especially. I believe it's in the Green Acres program too. And it's far enough and distance enough from the closest home that it won't make an impact. It's my opinion that the benefits definitely outweigh any detriment from these variances.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. I don't think I have anything further for him unless the board has anything further, Mr. Chairman.
Questions from the board? Okay. Does that include all of your testimony?
That does,
Okay.
unless the board has any other specific questions for me.
Do you mind if I ask the general public if they have any questions?
I do not mind.
Okay. Does the general public have any questions for any of the witnesses that have presented today? We'll go ahead and open up the public portion of the meeting. And seeing as we have no members of the general public here, we'll go ahead and close the public portion. Go ahead and give your closing testimony.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So,
Closing statement.
Sure.
Yeah.
As I indicated at the beginning of our presentation here, the site plan application that we're here before the board for will really be a substantial benefit to wildlife preserves and the good that they do in the township as it relates to Troy Meadows and the maintenance of Troy Meadows and the continued upkeep of Troy Meadows for the benefits of the township in general and the public good and all those users of Troy Meadows that like to go to events like Moth Night or other bird watching events organized by different groups like the Audubon Society and other nature type groups. The variances that we are requesting tonight, as Mr. Dunn testified for, the benefits here really outweigh any public detriment. They'll allow, by granting these variances and this application and this type of approval, wildlife will be able to store these trucks and tractors and the like that were previously exposed to the elements in the garage, and it's really not going to have any noticed effect on the outside public and the local neighbors and the like. As Mr. Dunn and Mr. Ferriello testified to the board tonight, from a practical perspective, during the summer months, you're not even going to see the proposed structure. During the winter months, you might see it a little bit from the closest residents, but it's going to be painted in such a way that it blends into the environment And I think that for all practical purposes, no one's really going to even notice it's there. So for those reasons and all the reasons set forth within the testimony tonight, I respectfully request that the board grant our application.
Okay. Do any of the board members have any comments or questions they'd like to share? All right, well, then I will accept oh, I'm sorry. My mind's gone blank. What am I looking for? A resolution.
Motion.
A motion, thank you.
Motion.
I'll accept the motion at this time, thank you.
You haven't been in the real world lately.
Maybe we can give the chairman a little fake Zoom picture in front of him, it'll be.
Everything will go a little bit
Better.
faster, yeah.
Yes.
It's a time delay.
I was waiting to say, do we have to give this person access?
To share your screen.
Oh, right.
Before we start the process, what are the modifications and the conditions that we have heard
So,
tonight?
If there was a motion to approve, there would have to be the following conditions of approval, which would be for the dedication of the 3 cul-de-sacs identified, for the applicant to interface with the tax assessor about the renumbering of the lots. Question. I think Mr. Dolan would agree that, as a condition of approval, that the applicant will work with the township about the gate key.
Sure. We
And
work with Township Emergency Services is really.
correct. And that the 3 variances would be the setback, 150 foot, the side yard, 100 foot, and the height of the maintenance garage.
Okay, I move in application number 21:501 Wildlife Preserves, Troy Meadows Road, Block 765, lots 8110, whatever it's going to be, that we grant preliminary and major site plan with C variances per the conditions just enumerated by attorney.
Do we have a second?
I'll second Hernandez.
Second Hernandez. All right, Nora, please call the roll.
Dinsmore,
Yes.
Vergiri,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Mandel,
Yes.
Mealy,
Yes,
Napolitano,
Yes.
Veely,
Yes.
Von Aiken.
Yes. Unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Please do well with the site. Thank you for the work that you do. Okay.
So, do you want copies of this? I want these, or do you?
The exhibits, can I have them?
You gotta give those to the boss.
Absolutely.
Historically, the clerk is the true boss.
All right. Is there any additional business to be brought from any members of the board? All right, well, I will accept a motion to close the meeting.
Motion to close.
Napolitano motions,
Mandel, second.
Mandel seconded.
Oh, good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Good to see you all in person.
Great being back.
Exactly. I just don't want
We all
them
do
to
it.
have.
We all do it.
I know.
I do.
And I can, so
And sometimes I feel like maybe
he'll be calling me. Why didn't I get this?
Nora,
No.
I don't see a camera anymore.
I figured I'd bring it to
I don't see the camera.
You know, I feel like we're all going to be exceptionally social.
Is it on the other side of the doors?
I don't know, like, even if you come around,
Nice to be back.
No.